Hello and welcome to Gettable, AFL.com.au's home of trade draft, free agency and contract news. We are brought to you, as always, by Google Pixel. Great to have Google Pixel on board in season 2024. I'm Riley Beveridge. This man right here is Cal Toomey. Cal, we've got plenty coming up today. We're going to have a few little games maybe, and we'll bring Tim Hazell, player manager from Vivid Sports, in as well.
Yeah, looking forward to it, Riley. Big show coming up. We just couldn't wait to get to Wednesday, so we thought, let's do a Monday show. There's so much to talk about, and I want to get started with what we'll call one of our favourite segments.
One that we created as well.
You created. It's kind of gone global since then. It is Who Says No? Let's hear it. And let's say it. There it is.
There it is.
We love using our screen. How good does that look? Who Says No, of course, is the deal making. It's getting to the point where some of these players know where they want to get to in the trade period. So let's have a look at what some of those deals can actually do and which club could say no in the prospective trade outcomes.
A few hypotheticals to get to. One that we want to start with is Tom Barrass and his move potentially to Hawthorn. Who says no? Tom Barrass to Hawthorn for pick 12.
Well, the deeper Hawthorn goes into this season, the more they'll have to give to get Tom Barrass over the line, I feel. So he wants to go to Hawthorn. Hawthorn wants him. I think West Coast say no to a straight pick 12 at this point. I believe they would say no to just pick 12 on its own. They'd want more than that, given his contract status. He has 3 years to run. If it was back at pick 8 or 9, maybe a month or so ago, when they were first, really into this, stepping up this assault for Tom Barrass, then that might have got it done. But I think at pick 12, I think they say no and want more.
I agree. I mean, if you're a 28-year-old key defender, you're contracted, you've won a premiership, you've won a best and fairest, the market in the past couple of years would suggest that it's more than pick 12. As you mentioned, if it's a top 10 pick, then yes. But yeah, I think Hawthorn will probably have to stump up a little bit more.
Hawks' next picks after that 29 and 67 on the current ladder, so they've obviously got the future hand as well.
Yeah, as well. So the future hand might come in handy there. What about Dan Rioli, another contracted player, and his potential move to Gold Coast? Dan Rioli for pick 5. Who says no?
The Suns have so many options. They can offer this one pick, or they can do pick 13 and 20 as a combination, keep pick 5, get a draftee in before the Leo Lombard bid, then match with later picks. Of course, they are the club that's changed the bidding system, but the bidding system still exists as it is, as we know, and as it was last year. So they can get creative. They know the system better than anyone. I think this is a neither says no. I think pick 5 for Daniel Rioli at his age is a little bit overs, but it's also a little bit overs that they need to do to rip him out of Richmond, where he wants to go to Gold Coast. He wants to be playing for the Suns next year. It's just a matter now if they can get a deal done and if they are satisfied with that. Pick 5 in this year's draft, when you've got pick 1, I'm doing that deal.
I agree. I think if you're a buyer, it's incumbent on you to get the deal done. And if that means paying a little bit over the odds, then so be it. So I think in this case, I think pick 5 is probably a little bit over. I think you could maybe say that he's a 10 to 15 range player. But I think if you're Gold Coast, you've got pick 5, you want the player, he's contracted. It's incumbent on you to get the deal done. So pay a bit over the odds to get it done.
I expect that to be officially requested next week as well, once the exit interview process starts and Richmond's season is over. They're well aware of his intentions to seek a trade to the Suns. So fascinated to see where it goes.
Bailey Smith to Geelong for pick 15. What do you reckon, Kel?
Well, this is an interesting one. This is you got to be in on the joke. Does Geelong look at a future first rounder instead and back themselves to win the premiership next year if they don't? If they win the premiership this year, does pick 18 suffice? They're in a position of control in some ways, because he wants to get there, he's out of contract, but then the Dogs can also say, well, if the deal doesn't go through, go to the pre-season draft and see and try and make your way through there. So if he was coming off a big, strong, fit year, and I think he would have had a really good year had he not done his ACL, then it would have been an earlier pick, but that hasn't been the case. What do you think?
Do you think we forget how good Bailey Smith is?
Probably.
At his absolute peak. I mean, remember that 2021 final series where he nearly dragged the Western Bulldogs to a flag? Basically leading that team as their best player throughout that final series. So you think
the Dogs say no?
I think he's worth a top 10 pick. I think, as you mentioned, if he had have had a full year going into this and had have played, not done his ACL in pre-season, I think there's no question that he's worth a top 10 pick. Does that change the market a little bit? Maybe, but I still think he's probably worth more than pick 15 as things stand.
Okay. How do they get it then?
I don't know. It's going to be a difficult one for them. Let's have a look at Liam Baker, and this is a two-parter. Liam Baker to Fremantle and or West Coast. Let's start with, should he request a trade to Fremantle? What about pick 10?
Well, I've just got an eye on Liam Baker if he nominates a club next week, and that will tell a bit of a story if Fremantle is going through the final series. I expect him to reiterate his point of view and stance that he's going to seek a trade back to Western Australia. It would be an absolute massive shock if he changed his mind now. It has happened before, Devon Robinson last year, but I can't see that happening now. I think it's intertwined though. If it's Fremantle and the Dockers can't get Bolton over the line, then the Dockers probably say no to pick 10 and offer their third pick as a bartering point, and then Richmond try and barter it down to their second. But if it's West Coast, there's no way I'm basically turning Tom Barrass into Liam Baker. I'm just not doing that.
Well, that's the other part of it. If he goes West Coast, you'd have to think it's going to be pick 12, which they'd get in from Hawthorn for Barrass.
That's what Richmond would want. But if I'm West Coast, I'm saying no, I'm not doing that because he's 1 year away from free agency. Top 15 picks are like gold for West Coast at this time of their build. I'm just not doing that. So Baker, as part of his decision-making, will want to know how the Eagles can actually get it done. Their next pick after that is 23 at the start of the
and that's not enough for Liam Baker, I don't think.
It isn't, but there are also ways that you can edge your way up the board too.
Yeah.
So who knows if they can get into that 15, 16, 17 territory, and maybe that is enough a year out from free agency, which he otherwise would have got to.
Yeah, I just think West Coast priorities at the moment should be elsewhere if they do manage to get pick 12 or a pick around that region for Tom Barrass. I don't think they should be turning Baker into Barrass because does that really help them long term? I don't think so. So Alex Neil-Bullen, we know he's requested a trade back to South Australia. What about Alex Neil-Bullen for pick 27, which is interesting because that is the pick they got from Adelaide last year for Shane McAdam.
I reckon D's would say no to this one because they'd back themselves to be better next year and give a future to.
Okay.
Instead.
Yeah, I can understand that, and I think that's probably the right way to go. Feels like there's a fair bit of goodwill here, so it feels like regardless of whether he requests a trade to Adelaide or Port Adelaide, you'd think the Crows are in the box seat there, that it's one that gets done and gets done pretty smoothly. But yeah, I think if you're Melbourne, similar to what you just said, back yourself to be better, offer up a future pick and go from there. Shea Bolton to Fremantle for picks 9 and 17.
This is a good deal for Richmond. I don't see them being offered any better than this in coming years. He is at a point of his career where, yes, he's entering a peak stage, but also he wants to get back to Western Australia for personal reasons, family reasons. Richmond paid pick 12 and pick 19 for Tim Taranto 2 years ago when he was 2 years younger than what Bolton is at the moment. So if that's a fair price for him, then Fremantle would have even a little bit better on the table in this scenario. It's also, as we said, intertwined with the Liam Baker. Richmond have to say yes to Shea Bolton moving before they can say yes to the deal, but if I'm Fremantle, I'm doing that one. Just on the Tigers, I've heard Adam Uze say it's frustrating that their players who are contracted have been talked about. Well, Jacob Hopper was contracted a couple of years ago as well when he left the Giants for the Tigers as a pre-agent.
Yeah, it was a very different situation then. So essentially Fremantle would be turning picks 9, 10 and 17 into Bolton and Baker. I think if you're the Dockers, I've said it all season, I think they're starting 4 in the centre bounce, whether or not it's Darcy or Jackson, with that combination of Brayshaw, Sarong and Young, is the best starting 4 of any side in the competition. So I think if you can add to that with Baker and Bolton, you almost become immediately, the expectation is top 4 and a premiership next year, I think, for the Dockers. I think they're ready and primed to go right now.
Yep, Jack Lukosius to Adelaide. Who says no for a future first round pick 2025?
I reckon if you're Gold Coast, you probably want a little bit more. You're probably, expecting the Crows to get a little bit better in 2025, particularly if Jack Lukosius is there. And this is someone who's contracted, who's shown he can be a star of the competition, either key forward or key back. I just worry a little bit about the Suns if they've shown their hand a little bit by dropping him and by saying this isn't a player that's in our plans for the foreseeable future.
Pick 5 in the VFL over the weekend could force his way back in. Rival clubs know he has 2 years to run on that deal, but it's a bit back-ended, close to the 7-figure mark over the next couple of years. Now, it's going to cost a lot from a money point of view, and the clubs will be able to do that. Adelaide has the salary cap space to be able to accommodate that. I think the Suns would ask for pick 4 this year. As their starting point.
Yeah, and I think they'd be within their rights to do that.
But Adelaide would be pushing for more future market, I believe. I still think Collingwood would be a good fit in Victoria. I think Victorian clubs will look at Jack Lukosius as well. So that was who says no. I just want to get to who says yes, because the Dan Houston situation has flipped over the past 10 days or so, and they are now in a fascinating spot where he's a player who's got 4 years to run in his contract at Port Adelaide. He might have played his last game depending on how the tribunal sees his hit on Isaac Rankin. This is delicately poised. He doesn't want to go to Melbourne, as we revealed last week. He did, but he doesn't now. But it does limit the options on where he could go, because who has the picks to make it happen and who has the selections to appease Port Adelaide to let him go where he's contracted and might be a back-to-back All-Australian next week. They've wanted 2 first-rounders for him. Let's just have a look at where Dan could land, because it's all Victorian clubs, of course. He wants to get back to Victoria for personal reasons and family reasons. Pick 1, Richmond. pick 2 North Melbourne, pick 6 St Kilda, 7 Melbourne, Essendon pick 8, Carlton at pick 11, 12 Hawthorn, Geelong pick 15. No first round picks for Western Bulldogs and Collingwood, the Victorian sides. So rule out Richmond. They're not going to offer pick 1 to do it.
No.
St Kilda as well are looking at the draft. Melbourne, they've been ruled out by Houston. Essendon, I think, probably takes a draft focus as well this year. North Melbourne not going to be playing around with pick 2 to get this one across the line. Carlton is interested in Houston, has been considering its approach for him. It's even my information that Michael Voss may have been in touch with Houston over the last week or so to get a better read on his situation. Of course, they did spend a lot of time together at Port Adelaide where Vossi was an assistant coach. I think Carlton at this stage would be more prepared to offer a future first-round pick, but that's not the market. That's not the market that Port Adelaide's going to be playing in either. There's a reason why clubs don't want to tap out of the early part of this year's draft, because it's very, very good, which we'll get to very shortly. But ball movement is gold, silver and bronze in the AFL, and he is so central to that. I think Carlton should be a club that is targeting him to fix a bit of their game. North Melbourne too, I'd expect to be interested, but maybe more in a future capacity like Carlton rather than this year's pick. And as I said, the Bombers, I think, more likely to stick to the draft this year.
There's also added incentive for Port Adelaide to get into this year's draft, given the fact that they've missed on a couple of drafts. They've traded out of drafts to bring players in and to mix around their picks. So they have been looking for picks this year. Well, Cal, on the Google Pixel, the Magic Editor feature lets you edit your photos right now on your phone. So if you could magically edit a club's draft hand to help get a deal done, who are you choosing?
Well, just on Houston, I just had a thought then. Like the Battle scenario, if Josh Battle leaves to go to Hawthorn and they can get a first-round compensation pick for him, which would come at pick 5, 6 whenever they finish up.
Would they be more willing to?
Would they be more willing to part with him there to get in a really silky player alongside Nazai Wanganeen-Malera off half-back? That's something that you think about. You'd have to think about. Just on another contracted player, we haven't got this on the rundown, but can we get the right here, right now sting out here? There we are. It's almost like it was on the rundown. There it is.
It's up.
There we are. Beautiful. How quick was that? Right here, right now, I just want to say this. Right here, right now, the AFL's decision to wait to extend future trading to 2 years in advance until the end of 2025. They've waited an extra year. That's potentially stopped the biggest trade ever. So we always say the biggest trade ever was the mega deal in 2022 when Jason Horne-Francis and all these players swapped hands. Christian Petrarca's trade options are very limited by the fact clubs just don't have enough capital to make a deal happen. He's been unsettled, he's been unhappy. Rival clubs have been aware of that for many weeks, but it just seems so hard to see how any club could prove they could get a deal done with 5 years remaining on his contract, with Melbourne holding the whip hand there and the control. He hasn't met with any clubs yet. I don't think he'd be requesting a trade unless officially they could show something that they can actually make something happen. Not having the extra year of future picks to dig in to makes that very, very hard. So if a club could have put forward 3 first-rounders for him, that would have changed the conversation, I think. I think there's only 4 clubs, and we see him here, target Trac. There's only 4 clubs who could actually be legitimate options for him this year, next year, or in the future. Essendon, Carlton, Collingwood, Hawthorn. It's a bit like the Chris Judd situation, Chris Judd, Petrarca.
So how do Collingwood get in if they don't have a pick this year?
Well, you have to move out players. But I think when you're looking at a club, and those clubs all are in that mix, you say, is he going to leave Victoria? I don't think so. Is he going to go to a club with a smaller supporter base than Melbourne? I don't think so. Is he going to be wanting to play in big games? I would have thought so. So there's all those things. Ultimately, I don't think any club's got the hand to actually make the conversation start at this point.
And even cap space there is a difficult one, because if you look at Collingwood and what they could trade in is going to be tough. Carlton, in terms of their cap space, is going to be tough.
Yep.
So it's almost sort of narrow it down a little bit more to Essendon or Hawthorn as things stand.
Well, that's for now.
Yeah.
But he also has years to go on this contract as well.
He does.
But I think the AFL's move to push that decision down
I 100% agree.
Has made it really difficult to actually make this big deal happen.
Yeah, it has. All right, let's get to Askable.
Bang.
Bang. Askable, of course, is brought to you by Google Pixel. Get in touch with us on Instagram at Gettable. We'll answer your questions. Gould wants to know, where is Josh Battle playing next?
It's the $4.5 million question. He has 60s on the table from the Hawks and the Saints. I think it's really, really tight. St Kilda's past 8 weeks have given them more of a chance. If he's going to Hawthorn, we'll probably know next week if he doesn't sign as soon as the Saints season finishes.
Yeah.
All right.
I reckon that's genuinely 50-50. Tim wants to know, what's the top 10 look like after the weekend's performances? There were some big games.
Huge. Remember Damien Hardwick called July Big Boy Month?
Yeah.
Well, August 12 or 13 was big boy weekend because they all dominated these top end players. Murphy Reid, my man, was best on ground for the Sandringham Dragons yesterday, 39 touches. He's got quicker hands than Ian Healy. If he was a wicketkeeper, he'd be great. His handballing's all over the place, faster fingers than a shoplifter. Levi Ashcroft has 46 disposals for the Dragons, and that was a compliment too, by the way. He's creative, so creative. 35 in the VFL last week for Levi. Luke Traynor played a bit further up the ground for the Dragons. I thought he was really good with 33 touches. The Whitlock boys, Jack and Matt, combined for 9 goals over the weekend. Jagger Smith had 42 disposals and a goal for Oakley. Tom Gross had 26 disposals. I thought Sam Lawler played a really good second half for the Rebels as well. Had 22 disposals overall, 8 marks. Jack O had 29 disposals, kicked 1 goal, a very good player. Bigger body midfielder, had a really good day. Job Shanahan in the VFL kicked 5 more goals for Essendon's VFL side, so he's creeping into top 10 to 15 positioning in the draft. Alex Taru, the Flying Viking, kicked 3 goals too, took a big mark as well. Jesse Detoli kicked 3 goals. Toby Travaglia played well in the VFL for Carlton.
Calm down,
Cal. Charlie West, the big key forward, kicked 5 as well for the Woodville West Torrens. Tyler Welsh kicked 5 goals in the sample. Port Adelaide sample side. Sid Draper had 23 touches. It was a really good week.
Are we any closer to knowing the pick one?
No.
No, we're not. Well, speaking of a man that you just mentioned there, Jack Whitlock, he's written in. He wants to know, what more does Josh Murphy have to do? Another bag of 6 on the weekend.
He's had a very, very good year. It's great to know the Bushies boys are Gettable fans. And he's kicked 30 goals in 9 games to the Bush Rangers. He's given himself a good chance. A powerful medium forward.
Go on you, Jack. Julie wants to know, will Collingwood land anyone this off-season?
To be confirmed. I mean, I think they'll be active. Trac, Lukosius, everyone. Just one the Pies can lock in, though. Alex Condon, who the Pies have been courting for a couple of years now, has committed to signing with the club as a Category B rookie. I mention this now because as of this week, he's eligible to be signed as a Category B rookie after doing his 3 years unregistered as an AFL player. So 3 years since his last game. Very talented basketballer, now playing in Florida. Don't expect him to be officially signed until later this year. This is some of the vision from a few years ago. Big 211 centimetre ruckman there. But he's committed. He'll play out this season with Florida. Obviously wait and see how his NBA pursuits and hopes go. But he's the ultimate unwrapped Christmas present. He certainly is for the Pies. Con wants to know, would any clubs come for Peter Wright? He's been dropped the last few weeks for the Bombers. Well, 3 years to go on his deal on a pretty hefty 4-year deal that he signed at the start of next year. So if a club's taking him, they're taking on a fair bit of money as well. Mitch wants to know, are St Kilda going to do a lot this season? They've got a lot of players to go. Who stays, who goes with their unsigned list? Yeah, they're an interesting one. So Josh Battle's obviously the big one as he weighs interest from Hawthorn, as we mentioned a couple of times. Cooper Sharman, Mason Wood, Dan Butler, Ryan Burns, Max Heath, they've all signed new deals for next year or are in the process of signing deals for next year, so they'll all be kept on. Seb Ross, Dougal Howard, Tim Membry, you'd expect them to explore some opposition interest. It leaves quite a few still unsigned, still with question marks weighing over them though. So Zach Jones, Liam Stocker, Jack Hayes, Jimmy Webster, Ben Patton, Riley Bonner among them. Josh wants to know, does Hawthorn actually need Harry Perryman? Well, you can always have more very good players, and he's versatile. He's a leader as well. He's ready to play. He can play in a number of different positions. They're up to their neck in the Harry Perryman chase. If they can pull off the trifecta of Battle, Perryman and Barras, that's a huge off-season for the sake of 1, maybe 2 picks. Port Adelaide, the other contender, mainly in the Perryman chase as well as the Giants. I'm surprised Essendon hasn't chased him a little bit harder, Perryman, to be honest. They're losing Heppel. He's a versatile player. They need leadership as well. It's too late now, though. Just on the Hawks, I actually forgot to tell our producer this, but I did send through a photo before. I've got an idea for their merchandise for the finals. Can we have a look at that? Go! There it is. The wizard hat. The Hawthorn wizard hat. They have to bring this out of the cheer squad. Just modelling it there. It's a no-brainer. This has to be at the first week of the finals. And in hindsight, I probably should have trademarked the wizard. A lot of traction. All right, plenty more still to come on Gettable. Let's bring in Tim Hazell.
Hi, I'm Andy from the Fremantle Dockers and you're watching Gettable with Cal and Riley.
All right, we are very grateful to be joined by our next guest, one of our favourites here on Gettable. It is player agent Tim Hazell from Vivid Sport. Tim, thanks for coming back.
Thanks, boys. Always an honour to be on the panel with you boys.
It's great to have you here. It's a busy time of the year for player agents and clubs. What's been your impressions from what clubs are looking for as part of your chats? You know, how busy are they going to be for the player movement period coming up?
Yeah, look, I think it's always going to be pretty exciting, the trade period. There's going to be some player movement. Obviously, the CBA is set now, so just moving some players around. The TPP's, always a talking point. So yeah, I'm expecting it to be pretty fired up.
Now, Adam Treloar's been one of you guys for a long time now. He's having a career best year. Could be an All-Australian in the next couple of weeks. Tell us about his story, because he's just recently hit his 250th game and in the form of his life.
Yeah, look, it's really nice to be talking about Adam not moving potentially this year, because
this is you last year.
Yeah, he's locked and loaded. But look, he played his 250th this year. He's in career best form. He's averaging 32 touches. Quick shout out to Kimmy, his partner. She's retired this year from an unbelievable netball career, so she's moved back down with their daughter Georgie, and he's just really happy. I mean, they've got a big game this week against Port to lock themselves into the finals, but we've just been really proud of Adam, and look, the All-Australian conversation's there, and we know, so we'll just wait and see, but he's in a really good headset.
Josh Gablich reported a few weeks ago that talks had started on an extension. He's obviously signed till next year, maybe an extension for another year beyond that as well. How close is that? Yeah,
so Sam Power and I have been, open dialogue over the last couple of weeks. So no doubt we'll get something sort of locked away for 26, 27, and that's probably where Adzi wants to end up.
It's awesome for him. He had some success in the mid-season draft with Geordie Payne, obviously taken pick 1 by the Kangas. Out of Tassie, how's he settled into his time at Arden Street?
Yeah, look, for Geordie, it was all about just getting into the AFL system and starting to really work on his craft and work on his strength and work on his fitness. So, yeah, he's had a great introduction to VFL. He'll go away and have a big off-season, come back for his first official pre-season, and then look to hit his straps in 2025.
You've got a few Tassie boys. I mean, Alex Pearce, Chase Jones, Ryan Mansell, Geordie Payne, as we just mentioned. How are you finding clubs are now playing their situations, given the impending Tasmanian entry into the competition, and are clubs wanting to get them contracted beyond Tassie's entry into the competition? How have you found that in your discussions with clubs? Yeah,
look, it's always been a topic now. I think with clubs, everyone's being a little bit respectful of just keeping it open for the player and obviously for Tassie entering in potentially 28. So yeah, most of our boys are sort of either contracted around that 25 to 27. Chase has been pushed out to 27. So yeah, we'll keep having some dialogue. As it gets a little bit closer, there's going to be some conversations around, do you push out past 28 or do you just sort of keep it around that 27? But look, the Tassie coming into the competition, everyone in Tassie is really passionate about it, and there's a lot of water to go under the bridge, but they're doing a great job down there. The Coates boys will play finals footy, being guided by Jeremy Webley again, so it's all really positive.
Jai Cully was a pick 1 in the mid-season draft a couple of years ago. He's made a successful return from an ACL injury this year playing at the Eagles. What's his situation like at the moment, obviously uncontracted beyond this year?
Yeah, so worked really hard to come back from his ACL. He's played 3 games this season. He's out of contract, but the conversations with Matty Clark, West Coast list manager, has been really positive, so we'll look to do something over the next couple of weeks, which would be good for him.
What about a couple of your young Tigers in James Trezise and Steely Green, who've shown a bit this year? They've got opportunities through the injuries as well that have hit Tigerland and taken some of them. Any talks with them to extend further?
Yeah, so both boys were in dialogue with the footy club at the moment. They've obviously got a little bit going on, but both boys will be there certainly in 25, potentially 26, depending on how the negotiations go.
Hopefully well.
Hopefully very well, yeah.
Extra years on the one. What about a couple of Giants who are part of the Vivid team in Braden Bruce and Lockie Keefe? We know the market for ruckman is always interesting at this time of the year. Lockie Keefe's been able to play every single role nearly on an AFL field across his AFL career. Both keen to play on, I imagine?
Yeah, it's a big Braden Bruce. I mean, look, he's a big man. He's been through a lot injury-wise. He did his hammy this year. He's had a little bit of back surgery. He's had some shoulder complications. So look, no one's put a line through Brucey's name. He's still working really hard to hopefully get himself back up and ready for pre-season. He's out of contract, so we'll keep having some dialogue with GWS about where that sits. And then Lockie Keefe, I mean, love Big Lockie. He's been around for a long time. We sort of have a joke that he's the gift that just keeps giving. I mean, he's been in the he's been back playing AFL the last 2 weeks, giving Briggs a chop out. So look, those conversations will start to sort of fire up over the next couple of weeks. But potentially finals is on the cards for Locke and GWS. So we'll just see how those ones play out.
Can you take us through Bruce Revell's story? Because not many had heard of him late last year when he came into the program. He was pre-listed as an academy rookie at the Lions, but he's changed the way they play with his ball movement. He's broken into this side. He's an established member of the team now. Signed the 1-year contract extension, obviously, as well in June.
Yeah, no, Bruce has been really exciting for us. So Tim Batty's been with Bruce for about 4 years. Missed out obviously on the last couple of drafts, but an interesting one with Bruce. So Harry Arnold gets picked up mid-season to Sydney, and then Bruce comes in and plays the back end of that VFL season, and then gets his opportunity on a list. But an elite kick, really smooth operator. We've got Kitty Coleman coming back from an ACL, so the future's really bright there for run and carry from Brisbane's defence. But yeah, he signed the 1 year extension and really looking to build his career. The other thing with Bruce, he's out, so he's probably back in the next 2 weeks. So hopefully he can come back and impact Brisbane in the finals.
He's been a revelation, that's for sure. Logan Morris is among 6 debuts for Vivid Sport this year, and we saw Caden Cleary do some really good things on Friday as well for the Swans. Tell us about his performance this year.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's been a huge year for Logs. I saw him the other day and we're just sort of reflecting on the season so far. But playing that third tall, I mean, his debut game was pretty sensational, full of Maccas, and went out and just did some Logs things.
Perfect prep.
Perfect prep. But it's been really exciting, and having Eric and Big Joey there has just given him licence to sort of roam. He can go up, he can go down, but he's really excited for the next couple of weeks, and I know that a lot of the senior boys have been getting around him, but I suppose every first year goes through some ups and downs, and he's just riding a nice up at the moment, so yeah, we'll see how Logs goes.
Any early talks on extending him, because he's obviously outside that top 20 zone from last year's draft, so he's only on a 2-year deal, not the 3 years that those first rounders got. Any talks early to move him on an extra year or so? Yeah,
so what happens outside of the top 20 is it's an activation for a third, so there's no negotiating it. It just, what the first rounders get, they obviously just gets passed on to those players. So yeah, we're having some conversations with Dom about potentially activating the third and then looking at a fourth. So they'll sort of keep sort of the conversation going over the next couple of weeks.
We spoke last week about Andy Moniz-Wakefield at the D's and how he could potentially benefit from the rookie extension rules and being able to be kept on the rookie list for a fourth season, given he won't play 10 games by the end of the year. How are talks going for him around Andy?
Yeah, really positive. I mean, the one thing for Andy was just biding his time and just waiting for that opportunity, and just through some injuries and some luck and some hard work and some really consistent footy in the VFL, Andy's got that opportunity, and he's shown that he's tough, he can tackle, he's got some really run and some nice flair with what he does with his game. So yeah, conversations with Lammy and Melbourne have been really positive. Would look to do something over the next couple of weeks, and then really allow Andy just to go into his off-season, pre-season with some footy under his belt, ready for a big 25.
What about James Blank at Hawthorn? Because it had looked like it'd be a really promising season for him. There was obviously a gap in their key defensive stocks at the start of the year. It looked like he might fill that gap. He's then obviously done his ACL. How's he tracking firstly in his recovery?
Yeah, so he's really aiming for round 1 next year. He's had some complications. He's had some infections. He's actually been in and out of the operating table 5 times just with his knee and just some things that have been a little bit tricky. But he's tracking really well now. It's all behind him. He'll start running in the next couple of weeks, and then the aim is to be out of rehab in Christmas, and then really work hard for his to win that spot back in 25, especially in the exciting Hawks outfit at the moment.
Well, they were devastated to lose him on the eve of the season, weren't they? That terrible training session they had where they went down. Hey Tim, thanks for coming in. Really appreciate you coming on Gettable again. You're a 2-time guest, which means you've already got a T-shirt. Disappointingly, you didn't wear it in today, but that's okay. You go home with this mug. So thanks for coming in. That's your one to take to the Vivid Sport offices. And also, we need you to sign this one because you are on our Gettables board. Little message for us before we put it back up on the board there. Well, there's a spot down there for you at the moment. So give that a little signature before we finish up. And Riles, we'll be back next week. Inside Trading coming on Wednesday, of course.
Inside Trading on AFL.com.au Wednesday evening. Every Wednesday on AFL.com.au, all the latest trade and draft news. And then we'll be back next week.
Thank
you, Tim. Appreciate it.
Boys. Appreciate it.
We'll see you next week.
Want to get all the latest footy news in one hit? From injuries to breaking news, the latest from the coaches, the Footy Feed team has you covered. Watch it now on afl.com.au and the AFL Live app, or wherever you get your podcasts.